Hello, welcome to today's Back to the City. Today I'm very excited to be joined by my good friend, Luc LeBlanc. Welcome, Luc.
Thank you.
It struck me that we've known one another for about a decade.
Yeah,
It was
quite a bit.
2014, and we must have known each other slightly before then, because by that point I organized a show that also had Lydia Liza and Liam Gerard on the bill at Lake Harriet Bandshell. So that was a decade ago.
The Lake Harriet Folk Fest.
Yes, Simon Calder's Lake Harriet Folk
That's
Fest.
right.
Featuring Glenn Little Diamonds.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then even just a few days ago, I think instrumental in us setting up this interview was I saw you and Sarah Morris, who's central in the book I've been working on, play together at the Astor, reunited with your dad, who I met a decade ago when we were putting that show together.
Yep.
And we made plans for this interview. And then just a couple of days ago, one night before Valentine's Day, we happened to each be celebrating one night early with our respective partners. And we were put in, I think we were the only couple of couples that were doing that, as far as I could tell, in the restaurant.
Right.
And we were put in adjacent booths. Nice little synchronicity.
Yeah, right next to each other. It was wild. We had gotten seated, and then this fella walked by. I'm like, oh, that's Simon. I'll see you Friday. Yeah.
And then that reminded me, I'd forgotten this, but we had a really good chat. In the meantime, around the corner from, that was at the Hat, wasn't it? We'd had a chat about a year ago, I think, at Cafetto.
We did.
And I think you'd Fugue State was the record that was...
Yeah, my 2022 album, Fugue State,
you've
was
been
out.
quite prolific.
Yeah, I just had a lot of songs the last couple of years. Just a lot of songs
3 albums
popping
in
up
a very
my
short
head.
period of time.
3 albums in 3 years.
Yeah, and they're all, it's a trifecta. They're all excellent.
Yeah,
my
thanks.
favorite is the one that we're going to be diving into momentarily, the newest one, Places. Via me talking about the Sarah Morris book, Brené Brown. I remember Brené Brown coming up in that conversation that we had at Cafetto when we were just hanging out around that time. Songs like Defeated, I Want to Be Defeated, made me think about some of Brené Brown's work on Rising Strong. Is there a Brené Brown connection, would you say, or at least like the ethos? For me, the wanting to be defeated.
Sure.
Before we dive into anything else, just that idea, does that relate? Because you were saying that you'd listened to Brené Brown's podcast a bunch.
Well, I wasn't like thinking about Brené Brown while like writing the song, but I think we're channeling the similar things because a lot of Brené Brown's work, and if folks haven't listened to Brené Brown's podcast, you should, or read any of her books. But she talks a lot about the power of vulnerability and embracing vulnerability and how much that can unlock if instead of trying to avoid being vulnerable, because I can't say it's fun to be vulnerable, but by embracing vulnerability, you can just I think there's fears you can face, challenges you can overcome when you kind of let it happen. And Places, that album, my album as a whole, is really about letting yourself feel whatever your mind wants you to feel, and defeated especially. Defeated especially. So channeling vulnerability and embracing it rather than pushing it away is something that's really important to me, and something we're not all good at that. I'm not saying I'm good at it, but
it's something that we can intentionally practice.
And something I've been trying to personally do more of the last couple of years. And I think Places, it's kind of where the name Places comes from, is accepting whatever place you're in, whether it's a physical place or emotional place, accepting it.
Yep. I think it's the second verse of the opening track, A Place. There we're yearning for a temporary place to hide within, long enough to miss it when I begin to pull away. And then in the following verse, there's a desire to look back at the places I come from. You had a little speech about, or monologue, about places at the Astor show as well, and these places could be physical places, or you were saying emotional places, psychological places as well. That I think the song "A Place" works so well as an opening because it establishes this new tone of. It's very reflective, particularly that third verse where there's this intention to look back at the places I come from and to perhaps make sense of these different experiences and integrate them and grow from recognizing how one is connected or attached to different places. And the willingness to just be with the difficult emotions, to be in the place where one is and not to just be reactive or push through to feeling happy. Comes through in Hazy too. What you were saying a moment ago immediately made me think of the moment in Hazy where it's concluded, ain't nothing wrong with a night alone to show me what I already know. And that, in turn, made me think of Honey Rebel, where we encounter a character who perhaps hasn't honed this practice of being with the Honey Rebel character. So you leave all of it to the alphabet to take the pieces of who we are and put them in order. It seems like you, in contrast with the Honey Rebel character, do not want to leave this taking of the pieces and putting them into a new order to something, to external forces.
Yeah, I try to, I get a kick out of embracing the counterintuitive.
Yeah.
And going back to feeling feelings, right? If we're struggling with something or trying to deal with a challenge or something's bugging us, our gut instinct is to push it away. But counterintuitively, feeling it and rejecting that, impulse to push it away is actually the fastest way to get through something.
Yes, the only way out is true.
Yeah, and I'm not like a psychiatrist or anything, but I feel like when we just let ourselves feel a tough feeling, whatever it is, our body kicks in, and it's like, oh, the bells go off, something's wrong. Let's fix it. Let's work on it. And I think that's my way of just accepting that.
Absolutely. So paradoxically, actually, sometimes just the ability to be still and to be with the agitating thing,
right,
can be what enables the most movement. It might initially be purely internal, but rather than just coming to exactly the same conclusion, being shown what I already know, spending this night alone, being with the thing, can lead to transformation and growth. And I think that a number of these songs of yours, you were saying about embracing the counterintuitive, there are some subtle shifts in, particularly in Own It is one of them, and also in No Good. There are subtle shifts in these songs, I think, that, to my ear, capture instances of this growth that happens, real-time growth, when we do stay with difficult things. So in No Good, what's counterintuitive to me there is that by the end of the song, we arrive at the contemplating the possibility that maybe I am good for the person in the final chorus. And of course, the chorus is already established in the other choruses. The I'm no good for you is echoed by I'm no good. So it's initially capturing that psychological process where I come to the conclusion I'm just worthless, I'm no good, through judging a particular interpersonal relationship that isn't going well. I'm no good in this context, I'm just no good. Let's sit with No Good for a bit.
Sure, let's do it. Let's sit with the feeling.
I think it's my favorite song on the record. Certainly a high contender. It's in the first chorus. Whatever you thought, all I know is I'm no good for you. I'm no good for you. I'm no good. And by the time we get to the second chorus, whatever she thought, all I know. And then by the end, whatever I thought, for all you know. There's a lot going on there, I think.
Yeah.
Whatever I thought, for all you know, maybe I'm good for you. So, for all the other person knows, maybe I'm good for you. There's a level in which we could be skeptical about whether we're good still, because it's like, for all this person knows, maybe I'm good. But at the same time, the song has taken us on this journey. What do you think about these subtleties? The choruses are just, obviously, on first listen, the listener might not catch these differences, but I think they're, in that song in particular, they're very important, and the song is taking us on quite a journey.
Yeah, I get really picky when I'm writing a song.
Yeah.
I'm pretty picky in general, but I get really picky about those the little words.
Yeah.
The but, the and, the because, the so, and because those little words, it's like a kind of like a train track, you know, and the but or the so or the because, you know, is like, I'm not a train engineer, but you know, when a train's going down the track and you can change the direction of it, that's what those words do. It really has it's a slight shift, but it's really going to change.
Yeah, there's big implications.
There are implications
which way
for
the
it.
train is going, and absolutely.
And no good. I kind of think of it like we all have a flashlight, really, and it's kind of like the flashlight is our focus, and we get to decide what we're shining it on. And I think no good is, you know, the protagonist of the song is experimenting with the power of what you focus on. Focusing on all the reasons why he's not good enough, you know, and then a little bit of the second verse, okay, this external person, what's that person focusing on? And then at the end, taking a step back and think, well, is what I'm shining my light on what the other person is shining their light on? It's a lot of, I think there's a lot of power of what we focus on, you know, and the more we focus on one thing, the more we're going to continue to focus on that one thing. And
I feel like No Good is not only about that, but it is quite deftly demonstrating that. I find it intriguing too that it begins with, I don't know what the answer is, and then in the third line, I don't know what the question was. What's going on there with the present tense? I don't know what the answer is, and then I don't know what the question was.
I think we're living in an age where people are really confident in thinking they know.
Hubristically so.
Yeah, I mean, we're all guilty of this. I'm not, you know, I'm criticizing myself too.
Right. Yeah.
I think we get really confident. We know what the answer is. We completely understand the questions being asked. And I think you see this, I mean, in the political arena. I think you see it in pop culture. I think you see it in daily conversations. I think people are really dug into their understanding of the question, their understanding of the issues, their understanding of the answers, and I try to be the first. When I was like in school, in classes, I would try to be the first one to raise my hand and say I don't know, and this is my question. Because it's hard.
Nice and Socratic of you.
Well, I try. It's hard. It's really hard to say I don't know.
It is.
But I would notice in classes, if I was the first person to say I don't know and ask a really obvious question, that we had a class. I was in a political science class in college once, and it seemed like the answer to every question being brought up in class was, it's because of globalism. It's globalism. Oh, it's an effect of globalism. And I raised my hand. I'm like, can we just talk? What is globalism? Like, yeah, we all got a vague idea of what globalism means, but can we define it a little bit? You know. And then after class, there were a couple of my classmates that were like, you know, thanks for being willing to be the dumb guy and just ask, you know, say you don't know. So that's part of the reason I started, you know, the song off like that is just kind of starting it with a curious beginner's mindset. You know, I think that's just helpful in a lot of ways when folks can be a little less confident in a healthy way.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there are no points really where you come across as criticizing people for not having honed that practice as much. And even
for sure.
even in Honey Rebel, which I was kind of introducing as a kind of counterpoint, I feel like the song catches the character, perhaps you, certainly the voice in the song. We catch it in the act of reassessing its relationship to the Honey Rebel character. Honey Rebel, keep it tethered, tied together like rock and roll, like the rock and roll. Honey Rebel, I'm your pebble. Let me fill that empty space in your soul. And then at the end, just let me fill that empty space. So that's the chorus. We keep coming back to this chorus. But in this instance, it's the verses where I feel like the way in which this character is related to and addressing the Honey Rebel shifts quite distinctly from verse to verse. What's your sense of the journey that we go on through the verses in that song?
I think it goes back to what the Honey Rebel character is and what it represents. And for me, I kind of thought of the character as someone who's trying to paint a portrait of who they are, but might not know what that is yet.
So again, maybe they feel quite self-assured and they desire to come across in a certain way, perhaps as adventurous.
Maybe, yeah, and I think a lot of it comes from, like, if we're looking at Instagram, you know, TikTok, which there's a lot of cool stuff on there. You know, I watch reels. I don't watch. There's a lot of cool stuff, but I think there's a lot of folks out there that are trying to become viral and create a brand, which is great. I'm all for it. But it's easy. I think we internalize that when we're watching reels, these short videos of a brand, of a. We see people who have built what they want to portray, and I think they're.
Perhaps.
A persona, yeah. So I think we're constantly inundated with folks who have built a persona, and they've created this short video that's gone viral, and it's awesome. And I love that part of social media. There's relatability. It's shot on a camera from a phone. It's not professionally produced. It's made media a little more accessible to people.
Yeah, and people have the freedom to create and craft how they want to be seen. Everyone can create an Instagram account and have more control over how they are presented. There's a good side to that, and
then on the other, I think on the other side, it creates a lot of pressure to do it yourself.
Right.
You have to make sure your persona is polished.
Yeah, craft one's identity.
And you got to make sure you create a video that's gonna, you know, you post, you got to make sure it's relatable and it's gonna. And there's a lot of pressure in it. And I think Honey Rebel is my way of saying it's okay to take some time to figure out what that persona is. And
absolutely.
You don't need to copy what's out there. And I'm saying this as somebody who has like 1,600 followers on Instagram. It's not huge, so I'm no expert on it. And I say this because I'm still trying to figure figure that out.
Yes. You're reckoning with that.
But I think there's some trouble, and this is what Honey Rebel gets to, is when you haven't figured out your thing yet, and you might try to copy some things that aren't you.
Yeah.
I think it's really easy to do that. And Honey Rebel's my way of saying it's okay to pause and figure out you before you know.
It's okay to, and you have your personal experience of finding a temporary place to hide within, to do some reflection, looking back at the places you've come from, to do this work of integration again. I think it comes down to that, and that seems to be the thing that the Honey Rebel character is not doing, not personally, intentionally taking the pieces of who they are and putting them in order, or at least doing, maybe if they're doing so, then it's too quick.
Yeah, and I've my whole life, my nickname when I was a kid was Last Minute Luke. I've always been a procrastinator, and so it's led me to. I was a procrastinator that always got things in on time, and I usually did things well, but it's led me to when I'm doing anything, I'm in a rush, right? Because even if I start ahead of time, which I've been trying to do more, I'm always in a rush because I've always procrastinated. So whenever I do something, it's due the next day, So it's like you get really amped about it, and there's that phrase or that notion of like, if something is built really quick, it can be torn down really quick. So yeah, trying to slow burn a little more. Take the time and really be thoughtful about it, and know that whatever you're doing, working on something for an hour a day versus trying to squeeze everything in a 5-hour rushed period one day before it's due. The consistent thing is it's more powerful, it's more sustainable.
Absolutely. This makes me think of Atomic Habits, which I think is something that we were talking about previously too.
Yeah, we did mention that one too.
Well, James Clear. It's also making me think of Marble Stone, because in Marble Stone, the final verse there says, "I'm going to write my story, little bit of truth and a whole lot of glory." I feel like the character who is able to assert that, I feel like here we are encountering someone who, the slow burn person. And Marble Stone, of course, relates to mortality. In the chorus, they're going to write my name in the middle of a marble stone. On the one hand, we're envisioning, we're picturing a context where I'm no longer there. Other people are writing my name on the stone. But on the other hand, the I in this song does seem to be someone who has been quite intentional about pulling the pieces together in a way that in this place of introspection, being with oneself, and in a way that acknowledges all the different aspects of one's life, pays attention to the different places and people, different places one has been, different people one has been. And could you talk a little bit about that song, Marble Stone, how it's reckoning with mortality, and perhaps in relation to what we were just saying about kind of the way in which this person's writing a story is different from like creating an Instagram story.
Sure.
What thoughts do you have?
Yeah, I love a story or a book or a play, what have you, that is just built on such a micro scene or a set. Like a play where you go see a play and there's one set, maybe it's an apartment, and it's just set there the entire 2 hours. And it just builds off this one thing, and it's simple. Marble Stone, I just had this idea of, well, we're all gonna die, unfortunately, someday, and what if what if the funeral was just a big party?
Like a celebration of life.
Yeah, or just an excuse to have a great time. And that's all it really was. And I just kept, when I was writing it, I tried to keep my mind on just the one scene. I didn't want to comment on too much. I just, what would it be like if you're dead looking down on this funeral and you purposely wanted it to be a big shindig? You didn't want anybody wearing black clothes. You know, wear all the colors you want. Have as much fun as you want.
Everyone gathered around will be just as stoned.
Yeah, because the marble.
Yeah. It's a good pun.
Yeah, and I don't know what that says. Maybe a different market for the funeral industry. Maybe that could be a package. You know, like.
What role does that "I'm gonna write my story" lyric play in that context? Because I feel like the first verse and the chorus definitely established the vibe that you're describing now. Is the way in which this individual, this character, is taking ownership of their story different from the kind of thing that we've been discussing earlier?
Yeah. Well, I think we all assume that others are thinking about us a lot more than they are. You know, I don't know if you've ever come back from like a social event or a party and you're like, gosh, I can't believe I said that. I said the wrong thing. Or what about when I said this? Did they think I meant that? You know, I get I get to be a ruminator in that.
Rumination is, that's the word, isn't it? Yeah. Yes, I have done that too.
But it just goes to show how other people think of you really isn't so much determined by them. You know, I think we all get to write our story a bit, and not as many people are paying attention as we might think they are. And I mean that in a good way. I think that's kind of a freeing thing to realize, like, you're not on this stage where everybody's watching. There's this big light. Like, you're actually in the corner, and so is everybody else. And you get to kind of quietly work on your thing and just do it. And there's something nice about that. And I think Marble Stone, that ability to just write your own story is kind of what I get at. And of course, there's a line in there, a little bit of truth and a whole lot of glory. At funerals, you know, there's some glorification that goes on. You know, everybody's a saint at their funeral, and that's okay. We all get our day to be a saint.
Yeah, to celebrate.
Yeah,
to celebrate the person. Absolutely.
Of course.
What you were just saying, I feel like there is a lot of overlap between what you were just saying and the Brené Brown ethos again, with your emphasis on everybody gets the opportunity, everyone can write their own story. For her, there is a really strong connection, I think, between this idea of being face down in the arena. One has to be face down in the arena, feeling shame, feeling I'm no good for you, I'm no good. And to acknowledge that one is, to be and stay in that place and work with that to be able to rise strong. And one way in which Brené Brown tries to convey that, I think, very powerfully, is this idea of, well, the idea of stepping into our story and owning our story. Okay, yes, I'm face down in the arena, and now it's the way to own the story, which is why I think it's so interesting that another of my favorite songs on the record, Own It, I think that's a song which is encouraging precisely that. It's through owning it, through owning the aloneness, really, there is a sense that, in these moments where we're feeling shame or we're feeling inadequate, obviously these are very lonely moments. And whereas some of the other songs we've been looking at these subtle shifts, where from verse to verse, or sometimes it's happening in the chorus, we're taken on a journey. I feel like in songs like Own It, instead the central lyric there in the chorus is like an anchor, and it holds us in this place for the entirety of the song. There's a cyclicality in the chorus where it's simultaneously noticing, ain't it something being all alone, and then it's a bitch being on your own. Yes, and there's a yes and here. Ain't it something being on your own? You get to write your story. You get to. It doesn't really matter how people are perceiving you, because look, you're doing it on your own.
Sure.
And yes, doesn't feel great. It's a bitch being on your own. And then you were saying about the important and so's. It's essential to the song that after that, what could be the final lyric in the chorus, it's a bitch being on your own, but you own it. It always lands on but you own it. How do you feel about this yes and that's happening? It's just in the chorus here. It's bad. Essentially, it feels bad to be on your own, but good can come of owning being on one's own. That's happening in the chorus. As far as I'm aware, the chorus is the same each time, unlike in some of the other songs. And I think that the verses also keep on taking us back, pulling us back to this place that we would, if we want to avoid discomfort, we'd quite happily leave. What thoughts along those lines do you have about Own It?
Yeah, I think that that phrase, it's the way I've usually heard it is there's something negative or something with a negative connotation.
All right, I own it.
But I own it.
Yeah, right.
I own it. Or I don't know. I suppose you hear it in corporate speak too a little bit. Oh, you messed up that deliverable. You gotta own it. Or whatever. Own it usually has kind of that negative connotation. But
I'm no good. I own it.
Yeah. Back to that counterintuitive thing. And that the theme of the album as a whole of just accepting, the place you're in. There's really a lot of positive to owning something, because it means you can change it.
Absolutely.
Right? If you own something, you can change it. You have some control there. I mean, we're on this rock in the middle of space that's just spinning, and there's this star that happens to be aligned perfectly so that we're warm and cold at some point, but we're warm enough to live and stay alive. And there's not a lot of things we have control over. So Own It's my little attempt to find the things we do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And take that negative and try to squeeze out some positive.
Yes, absolutely.
It,
yeah. And do you think that, again, it's not like you're writing Brené Brown songs, but there is such a strong overlap there, I think, between the essential wisdom of Brené Brown, that, again, this metaphor of being face down in the arena, I own that I'm face down in the arena. I mean, at least could be perceived as having messed up here. Okay, I own it. And then that important and, then there's the possibility of being the one, not leaving it all to the alphabet to take the pieces, but actively engaging in the process oneself of integrating these pieces, and then magically, I think the paradox here, as soon as you own the story that you're in, then the story becomes richer. It's no longer the same story. Like, narrative development happens that wouldn't otherwise happen when we own it.
I think that's going back to it, talking about Instagram and TikTok and social media. I think we're experiencing a little shift, and I think more and more people are embracing that channel of vulnerability that, you know, Brene Brown and others have been talking about for quite a long time. Because you watch reels, you know, and it's not professionally produced stuff. It's people showing their daily struggles in a very raw sense. Nothing's that edited, and it's like, look at this thing we struggle with, and it's attaching humor to it. And I think that's just such a beautiful thing. I mean, humor is so powerful in pushing us through, you know. Anyways, I think it's a really positive aspect of social media. I know social media gets a lot of flack, and in a lot of instances it's deserved, but that's one where I think there's kind of like an unspoken movement going on of people embracing vulnerability, and I love it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Me too. I feel like this song that relates most to what we're presently saying is Break My Wall. If we're celebrating vulnerability.
Yeah.
And there, I love that it's called Break My Wall too, because that's just referencing the metaphor of the wall that comes up in the third verse.
Yeah.
In being called Break My Wall, it's celebrating, giving approval to, participating in the wall breaking in a way. Whereas if it weren't for this person in whose presence one feels one is in a place where one can be vulnerable, if it weren't for that, then one would perhaps be actively building up one's wall more still.
Sure.
But with the song being called Break My Wall, like again the counterintuitive, inviting this. I built my wall in the early days, and I walked my line on the promenade. But you broke right through my wall of clay. I didn't know your hammer was built that way. And that's such an interesting image too, because we feel safe in the place with this person to be vulnerable, and yet they do still have a hammer that they are deftly using to, in a way that serves us, break down this protective wall. What thoughts do you have about Break My Wall?
Yeah, it's kind of like if you're I don't know, you ever been like reorganizing a room or something, and you know, you're trying to move this thing over there, and if you could just put the wire around behind this, it would, and you hit a certain point where it's like, it's almost easier if I just take literally everything out and rebuild it from scratch. And it's not to encourage people to go break stuff, but sometimes, metaphorically, if we can just break down whatever's not working, just completely get rid of it and start from scratch. And I think that's like a concept in construction too. Like oftentimes it's much easier to just and start from new rather than trying to take something that might be half broken and trying to piece, you know,
and this is
things together.
This is a metaphor that you're using, if I'm following in this context, to think about our habitual ways of being. Seems like a miraculous thing to do, to just pause all of our habitual ways of being and then reconsider, okay, this is the place that I'm in, what's serving me. Perhaps I don't need as thick a wall of to protect me from people that might hurt me as the wall that I'm recognizing as I'm in this reflective place. I'm recognizing I built up a pretty thick wall.
Sure.
And then I'm seeing where I am in this present moment, and it's obviously much harder to do, but the song seems to be your metaphor of moving everything out and then recreating from scratch.
Yeah.
Is it getting at that? Like this, like considering the possibility of quite radically changing habits through recognizing where they've come from and which is serving us in the present.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, you know, and we all pick up certain habits or ways of I don't know, just ways ways of thinking about things, and sometimes if you can get rid of something that you think is protecting you, you can realize like, oh, it's actually been keeping me from enjoying a lot of certain things that I'm trying to think. I'm sure I've got a good example, a good tangible example, but I can't think of something at the moment. So
if you suddenly do,
if I suddenly do, I'll bring it back.
Cool.
Yeah.
'Cause it's interesting that Hazy. It's nice, I think, that Hazy is the next song after Break My Wall. Just a little hazy now, just a little hazy now. And then in one instance, I think it's the penultimate instance, it's crazy. There is a collective insanity, I think, as we kind of get caught in these habits that don't serve us.
Yeah.
And you seem quite committed to just observing, compassionately observing both yourself and the rest of us.
Yeah.
Getting stuck in these modes. Is that something that you would own, that as a songwriter, in as compassionate a way as possible, recognizing the way in which we're functioning, often dysfunctional ways in which we're functioning, and to stay in a place of compassion?
Could you rephrase your question again? Sorry, not.
It's a bit. Yeah, exactly. As I'm asking, is this who you are? Do you want to own this?
Yeah.
Clarity is
Let
important.
me make sure. Yeah.
If it is the case that it's extremely common to fall into habitual ways of being that demonstrably don't serve us, in the moments and insofar as you do recognize yourself and others doing that, it seems to me like you have a commitment to doing something positive with that awareness. So rather than cynically just observing people insanely repeating things that lead to negative results, I feel you talk about humor and the importance of humor, perhaps as a catalyst in enabling us to break free from things that don't serve us. I think both humor and compassion and a readiness to a place that I feel that I'm in when I'm listening to your record is a place of acceptance and understanding. Oh yeah, it is the case that I somewhat crazily, keep on doing this thing.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like Luc LeBlanc is like wagging his finger and being like, "Stupid Simon."
Oh, good.
You're no good.
No. Well, I'm kind of I get kind of motivated by the fact that decisions are hard.
Yeah.
To take this, should I take this gig or not? Should I apply for this or not? Should I release this song first? Should I, decisions are really hard, and I'm motivated by finding clarity and making decisions and choices. I mean, life is just full of choices, every single day, and I think that's something that bugs a lot of us, really, is just making the right choice. Did I do the right thing? Did I say the right thing? And I think a song like Hazy, it captures that hazy feeling when we don't know what to do. Yeah,
we don't in this moment have the clarity, and that's okay too. We'll be in that place.
And so it's usually one of two things, or both, is you don't have all the information, so trying to get all the information on the board. And then two, the second reason might be what the right answer is, but it's really uncomfortable
to want to conclude that.
Make that. it's hard to be uncomfortable, but the more you make yourself uncomfortable, the more comfortable you get being comfortable. Uncomfortable, I mean.
What you were saying about data, that's a question, again, that Brené Brown and others encourage us to ask. So when we're caught up in, if I know that I'm reactive, I'm like caught up in shame, she would encourage me to write she calls it shitty first draft of my experience, the journal, and don't edit. Don't try to make it to come across, for example, as like nicer than I actually am feeling. What thoughts do I actually have? And then we can, okay, that is the story that I'm telling myself. And now that's a shitty first draft of the story. And now what data do I have? Does that story as presented in the shitty first draft contain all the data that's relevant to what's actually going on? And then can I get some more data? At the moment, it's a pretty like, two-dimensional story. Like, this person was really mean and I am sad. Yeah. And, okay, so what did they do exactly? And just getting more data, getting more information. It's interesting to me that there's 3 songs that we haven't really zoomed in on, and I think it's going to be interesting to talk about the 3 together, because the opening track, which we have talked about a bit, of course, The Place, right in the center of the record, Never Met You At All, where we have kind of regret. That then it seems like we're conscious of making choices, and I wish I could go back and choose. I would like to choose not to have met this person, even though they've been central in my emotional life, and I can't stop thinking about them. I would like to go back and make that not be the case. And then at the end, right way, then we're choosing the person. The refrain is, there is a right way to roll. You're the right way to go. It's almost like the anchor. I use the metaphor of the anchor in the other song. Here it's like what's anchoring our final destination, final track of the record, is this sense that, okay, if I have this perception of like getting it wrong sometimes, missing the mark, that's because sometimes I get it right. I also have the experience of and when I'm with this person, in this place with this person, I feel that more. And so I'm going to choose to spend more time with this person and not lose sight of the fact that things feel right and I feel myself and I can grow and shift where my boundaries are in a way that serves me when I'm with this person. So A Place, the opening track, A Place, ends with the idea that you can show me the way. That's the closing lyric of the opening song. And then the record ends with a celebration of someone who does show the way. And then right in the middle of the record, I wish I never met you at all. It's just interesting in terms of the journey that we go on the record. What thoughts do you have about any number of those 3 songs?
Well, it kind of goes to decision making, choosing, what to do, and this is applicable to everything. Right Way has this kind of, at least to me, calming melody, this just resolve. It just goes from the 1 to the 4, 1 to the 4, 1 to the 4. It's just like you're just on the water. We're not even going to go to the 5 and make anybody anxious. We're just going to stay on the 1.
No discomfort in the final song.
It's funny, we were in the studio, it's like, what are the chords? It's just the 1 and the 4. It doesn't do anything else. But it's just that sense of clarity. I mean, and it's the payoff. It's the payoff of embracing the place you're in and fully accepting it, even if accepting it is uncomfortable, even if making that choice is the right but uncomfortable choice. Yeah. Ultimately, at the end of going through that feeling of being uncomfortable, you find solace. And, I love making music. I love writing songs. I love performing. But I also like to help people feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you do that with your songs as well, but not only through your songs.
Yeah, and if I can give back in that way, because I've been very fortunate with opportunities I've had and support systems, and it's something that I've learned that's just super helpful to me is taking whatever that uncomfortable thing is, and just putting it out on the table, as you were saying, with that first draft idea that Brene Brown has, and don't censor anything. Just what are you feeling?
Own it.
Whether it's if it's real, whether you're making half of the crap up that you think is happening, just put it out there.
The hazy, crazy mess.
And look at it as data, because that's really what our thoughts are. It's just a big computer spitting out a bunch of
our thoughts and emotions.
Good stuff and nonsense and everything in between.
And so and the things that seem like crazy nonsense is if we like, okay, but that seems quite prominent in my thoughts.
Yep.
Let's be with that.
Yeah.
There must be something important here.
And I think emotions. See, I love data. I love spreadsheets. They're just the coolest thing. VLOOKUPs and the COUNTIFs. They're super fun. Even if you think you're not a spreadsheet person out there, go check out a spreadsheet. They're really powerful.
Don't knock it till you've tried it.
But I think there's this giant divide between our emotions and what we feel and the arts even. And then there's the data side and the business side of things. And there's so much room for them to come together.
Absolutely.
And we've talked about Brene Brown a lot. But as a researcher who she delves in emotional states, vulnerability, but she also ties it with data. We all struggle with emotional things. We all do, and there's so much room, as you were mentioning, to take data and apply it to it. Take those thoughts in our head, think of it as a data point, not like a thing that's going to control us, not something that's going to control or change our day. Easier said than done. But look at it as data, throw it out there on the table, and I think it can make an answer a lot clearer than just letting it stew.
Totally.
So that if places, I hope people enjoy the music. I hope they just enjoy putting it on, even if they don't even pay attention to the lyrics. I hope they enjoy it in that way. But if they want to listen further, I hope they can get that message too.
And I love that it leads us to this soothing place. As much as the songs are encouraging us to be with discomfort, it leads us to this comforting, soothing place where the reason why we're comfortable, I think the reason why you're comfortable having that be the place where it ends is because that provides a context where these insights about there being a way that you can trust, this way of uniting, honoring your emotions and paying attention to data, those two things, like Brene Brown does as well. There's a right way, is the refrain, like the backing vocalist, emphasizing that. But the fact that for you, as demonstrated by the data that is lyrics here, it relates to your interpersonal connections. It's clear from the verses, "Let me talk you off the ledge, honey," it's the opening lyric, that as soothing as the song sounds, that it's not as if this relationship that's being celebrated in the song is always a walk in the park. There's discomfort, there is stuff to navigate, but choosing to do so together in your experience as you compile the data is what you choose. So the fact that there's a right way to roll becomes interwoven with you're the right way to go. Addressed to a specific person, but obviously if we're the listener, we can just think we have our specific people too that we like to roll with. And
we do.
And that's a lovely way that's a nice place, isn't it? An appropriate place for places to lead us to.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, doing what we talked about, you get to know yourself a little better, and I don't think any of us know ourselves as much as we think we do.
No, it's a challenge.
Yeah,
we're pretty complex.
And it's a lifelong challenge. And we change every day, we become different people in a way. But the more you get to know yourself, the more you get to know those around you and know how you interact with them. And, develop those deeper friendships and relationships. I'm no expert, but that's just the stuff I figured out. And I think that's what songwriters do. You know, they just say, hey, here's what I figured out.
I think that's what songwriters do, and I'm glad that you own it.
Yeah, there we go. Me too.
You were talking about making choices before, and the choices of like which shows to play and so on. A show that you're playing that's coming up next month, by the time that this is aired, is at KJ's Hideaway on April 12th, with Thomas Stika.
Yeah.
Thomas Stika. And you'll be an at least subtly new person by that point as we continue.
Yeah, I'll be completely changed.
But these songs were written 2022, early 2023.
Yep, exactly. Late 2022.
Yeah.
For the most part.
And very early 2023 for a handful of them. Because when you sent the lyrics, they had dates in it.
Never Met You at All was actually written when I was like, I think I was 15 or 16.
So that's interesting.
That's an older one.
Is that the oldest one in this batch?
Yep. Never Met You at All, honestly. Like I said, I was 15, 16 at the time. It just, I remember writing it, and it was just one of those songs that like kind of wrote itself.
It's relatable.
In a way.
I think most people can, and at some point in their life, feel that way about someone who's meant a lot to them.
Yeah, and I didn't really think too much about the themes of, well, obviously the themes of places, you know.
Yeah.
But it just kind of wrote itself. It was just a nice, solid song. And yeah, I when I was like in high school and then a little bit in college, I played music under the stage name Little Diamonds.
Yeah, when I met you.
Yeah, when I met you. That's Never Met You at All is a track on an album of mine called New Orleans Bound.
Oh yeah. Which was the album that was your album at the time that you did Simon Calder's Lake Harriet Folk Fest.
Yeah, it came out. It's 2013. So
I thought it rang a bell.
Yeah, it's out there. So
this sounds like Luke.
Yeah, and all my music's on Spotify and Apple Music and stuff. So if folks look up Little Diamonds Never Met You at All, they'll find the old version, or the original, the OG. And then if they want to, then they can go listen to Places. And the original version was just solo acoustic, and then this newer version has the whole band on it. We recorded everything live in the studio.
Yes. I love that old song has a place in Places.
Yeah.
A central place in Places. It's difficult to own, okay, I really love this person, I have really strong feelings, and I would kind of prefer it if I didn't have the complication of being weighed down by that. Owning, feeling something like that is the first step to working with the data and arriving in the place that we get to at the end of Places.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you highlighted that.
There's a little bit of that kind of frenemy idea
in
that
exactly.
song too, because I think there are people out there that have the thought of I wish I'd never met you at all about somebody, but they're actually best friends that are tied together for their whole life. I don't know, Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, you kind of if you've read any of those kind of biographies, they've got some of those feelings about each other, but they also say in interviews like we're pretty much married at this point.
Maybe they should write some shitty first drafts.
Yeah, there you go. So, some of those folks you wish you'd never met at all. It's like they kind of drive you in a way to keep going.
Absolutely.
It's good to have a little friction in life.
Yeah, exactly. The discomfort again. Okay, well, what a good conversation. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Please continue being as prolific. Those 3 records, already solid records.
Thank you.
Came out in pretty quick succession, so I suspect you have more up your sleeve, and hopefully it'd be great to talk with you about whatever's next whenever it comes out. But in the meantime, KJ's Hideaway is where we can catch you next on April the 12th.
Yep.
It's been a pleasure to chat with you today, Luke. Thanks for coming in.
Likewise.
This has been Back to the City. I'm Simon Calder, and we'll be back on MCN6 at 10 p.m. next Thursday.